It's finally Friday.
It's Friday, Friday.
Thank God it's
All right, welcome back to the Friday Show, presented this week by Woodbine's Pattison Canadian International Stakes. It's a big race this Sunday. We're going to talk about it, Ray. But first, we talked about the Breeders' Cup last week. How about we discuss the Pegasus World Cup, which is really just around the corner in late January. Last year, all the slots, the 12 slots where the owners put up $1 million each, they were all filled by mid-May. So we had a good idea and some confidence that everything was coming together by this time last year. This year, we haven't heard a whole lot. Who might be in? If the slots have been sold, what's your sense about where we are with the Pegasus?
Well, there were a lot of doubters when Frank Stronach first announced this concept of owners putting up $1 million for a horse race. Well, they got it done the first year, and they actually had more people interested in buying starting gate positions than the 12 spots in the gate. Everybody learned something from it, and I think one of the things they learned is let's take a wait and see attitude. People bought slots last year when they didn't have a horse. Maybe they thought they could resell it and make money. That didn't happen. So people are waiting for the Breeders' Cup to see who comes out of the race in good order and who might want to extend their career if they're going to stud in 2018 by at least one more race, as California Chrome did when he left the Breeders' Cup, ran in the Pegasus, and then he entered the breeding shed just a couple weeks later.
Right. But to be fair, I think there's also the issue that some of these owners, we've heard some comments recently, they feel like maybe the experience wasn't what they'd hoped for last year, particularly financially. What I mean is they don't think they recouped enough off their $1 million investment or what they thought they were going to get. Now, I'm not talking about the top 3 finishers. I'm talking about 4 through 12. Some people took a $750,000 bath. And they put up the money, they took the gamble, but they kind of had the sense, based on their comments, that the revenue from handle and concessions and all that, which they were sharing in, might be higher. So Stronach has added $4 million to the purse. Now it's $16 million. This is in order to help make sure that, if you take a bath, it's kind of a small one instead of a big one. But I think the pool of owners has shrunk by a few. Some of those who participated last year will not be in it this year. However, there are some other things that might be under consideration. For example, the venue itself, where the race is being held, and certainly, you just talked about California Chrome, who got hosed with the 12 post position because at 1.1 miles at Gulfstream, it's really tough to win from out there, almost impossible at that distance.
Yeah, I think that the post position is a real problem. If on that racetrack configuration, 1.1 miles basically starts on the turn, and you come out of the starting gate from the outside post position and you're on the turn. And Victor Espinoza did everything he could to try to save some ground, but he was still 6-7 wide all the way around the turn, and he was wide the rest of the way, never really saw the rail. So to me, I'd rather see the race run at 1.25 miles, which I know they did it shorter in hopes of getting milers to stretch out, but the classic American distance is 1.25 miles on dirt, and to me, that's what the race should be run at.
Yeah, but there's fewer and fewer classic distance horses in the older division these days, so the pool is smaller. I think if you moved it to Santa Anita, by the way, Stronach also owns that racetrack, and the weather in California in January is pretty good. It would be much less of a bias at that if they wanted to keep it at the 1.1 miles at Santa Anita. So there's one idea. It is called also the Pegasus World Cup, but we didn't have any international participation last year, and I think it would give a boost to the race, the appeal, the betting handle, especially if you get maybe a Japanese horse in the field. That certainly would help. And also, this weekend, there is a race in Australia with this same model called the Everest. It's brand new. They're calling it the world's richest turf race. $10 million. Each owner put up $600,000. It's 6 furlongs. So it'll be interesting to see how that race, they got all 12, so how that race, the fallout after that, and whether they're going to do it again next year, and maybe whether there's even some way to collaborate with the Australians.
Well, the main thing here is I think it's a good concept, and the idea of owners paying for the purse is not exactly new. There's been futurities and quarter horse racing, and standardbred racing has had that kind of thing where you make payments. And the Breeders' Cup is based on breeder nominations, and then the entry fees are high. So it's not the first time owners have put money up. It is the first time they put up $1 million. But what I love about this is it gives incentive to stay in training for another year or even another race, as California Chrome did. And it's possible to go from the Pegasus World Cup in late January to the breeding shed in mid-February. California Chrome proved it can be done. I don't think every horse can do it, because a lot of times stallion farms want to let a horse down from the racetrack, ease him into his new career, test breed him to some mares before the breeding season officially begins. And California Chrome, fortunately, was a horse that didn't need any on-the-job training. He was raring to go.
Yeah, and it's a heck of a bonus if you can get your horse in this race. The horse as a stallion isn't going to make that much money, $8 million or so during the breeding season. So, it's a good incentive to go in the race. Although I think if you didn't have an Arrogate or a Chrome with a better post position, if you're a middle of the pack horse who was going on to be a stallion, you might not want to take the chance, because the likelihood of getting the prize money is so much lower. And when I was talking about making it more appealing to the world, I didn't specifically say this, but what about holding the race on the turf? Again, back to the fact that so many other countries race on turf. I think you would probably lower the handle that way, so maybe it wouldn't work out. But just things to think about. I think the point I'm trying to make is the second one has to be better than the first, and it has to work, and the owners have to be happy, because I don't think there'll be a third one if it doesn't.
Well, and the first one, they had it at Gulfstream Park, which you can't have a big crowd there, and they purposely limited the crowd. They charged a lot of money to get in. The nice seats were, the dining room experiences were expensive. They want to give a good experience to people that aren't afraid to pay for a big ticket item, and that's what they did. I think you could still do that at Santa Anita and still have room for more people than the 16,000 they had. So will it go to Santa Anita? Not this year, because it's already etched, that it's going to be, the second running is going to be at Gulfstream Park. But in future years, I think Santa Anita might be a better venue for it.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? Do you think it's going to go off as planned in 2018, the Pegasus World Cup? Will it be a success and they'll have a 12-horse field and all that? Let us know with the poll on our website, PaulickReport.com. All right, let's move on and talk about the Pattison Canadian International.
Dartmouth in second, and they're not catching Erupt. Erupt has been tremendous to win by a length.
Ray, last year Erupt came over to North America and won the Canadian International. He's back in the field this year, but he's got some tough competition, and it's actually a pretty perplexing race when you look at him on paper. Like, anyone could win it. What are your thoughts?
Well, that Erupt is now with trainer Graham Motion, who I think is going to win the race again this year, but with a second horse, a horse called Messi, who I think is a horse for the course. 2 starts, a first and a second at Woodbine. Seems to really like that deep, wide, gentle turn turf course. I don't know much about Messi. I don't know how he got his name, but I think he's the horse for this race.
Well, looking at his dam, I think her name is something similar. But it also could be Lionel Messi, the international soccer star, right?
Lionel Messi? I've heard of Pele.
Blank stare he gives me. Yeah, Lionel Messi is like the Pele of today.
Okay.
Anyway.
If you say so.
Anyway, looking at the rest of the field, Idaho comes in. What a world traveler this guy's been in the last couple of months. He performed at Royal Ascot. Then he went to Saratoga. Then he went back to Europe and just ran in the Arc 2 weeks ago. And now he's back in North America to race in this race. That's incredible. Having said that, I'm going to bet against him with a horse named Postulation. A bit of an upset. Tactical speed, in good form and last raced well at Kentucky Downs in his last start. I love horses coming off of that turf course because I think it gives them conditioning heading into their next race. So I'm going to go with a little bit of an upset and postulation in this weekend's race.
The thing I love about the Woodbine turf course is usually when the race is over, you have no excuses. It's wide. The turns are, you're not going to get cut off. There's plenty of room. But having said that, I really think this is a rider's race because these horses are evenly matched. There's not a lot of pace in there, and some rider is going to outsmart another one, and that's probably who's going to end up winning it.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show, presented by Woodbine's Pattison Canadian International. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.